Welcome to Brain Matters, the show about all things neuroscience. Whether you're a seasoned academic or just curious about the brain, our guests will be covering everything from cutting-edge research to practical tips for improving our mental health. I'm your host, Thomas von Rijn, and today I am joined by Professor Paul Maruff, honorary professor at the Florey Institute and founder of the neurotech company Cogstate, here to explore the world of neuroscience careers outside of academia. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Thomas. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So could you start by telling us a bit about yourself and the path that your career has taken over the years to get where you are now?
Sure. So I have an undergraduate degree in psychology that I obtained from La Trobe University in Melbourne. I then did my PhD at that same university. The area in which I worked was sort of contextual at the time. HIV, a human immunodeficiency virus, had just sort of started to spread, and there was lots of concern health-wise. And one of the areas of that was the extent to which it affected the brain. And so as I was coming of age, so was that question. So my PhD was in the area of which HIV gets into the brain and what effects it has. So I trained through that. I went following that to the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, to continue on a postdoctoral scholarship. I worked there for a couple of years, and I went to the University of Oregon to work with a guy called Mike Posner, who's very famous in cognitive neuroscience, and then came back to Australia. I came back to Swinburne University of Technology in the biophysics department there. Then I went back to La Trobe as an associate professor in psychology, and it was at that time that sort of the reverberations for the start of the idea that essentially gave rise to the company grew, and all of a sudden the company started, even without me having any control about it, and started to run away. And I found myself saying, should I remain here in the academy, or should I jump across? And I was having these visions of the future when the ghost of Christmas future came to me and said, look, you missed out on jumping on that. And so I made a decision to leave the academic pathway and jump into the company full time.
Amazing. Okay. My first question following that would be, what specifically motivated you to make the transition from the research role into the industry beyond maybe just thinking, would I regret not taking the leap?
No, it's probably just, would I regret not taking? So that's a funny question in a way, because your regret not taking the leap is not because you imagine riches beyond your wildest dreams of that. It's because ultimately the company was formed around an idea of mine. And really what I didn't, I suppose if in reflection, this is not at the time, is really saying I'd regret actually having the opportunity to pursue to its end an idea that you had that suddenly had taken life sufficient outside of the university world. And so that was the main reason. It was in pursuit of the idea. Interestingly, it hit me around about the time is that largely moving into a company essentially is not dissimilar. Well, my opinion is that the pursuit of an idea in the context of a company, the ideas are exactly the same as the ideas that you pursue in the context of the academy, in the university. Just that the audience is different, in as much as that the idea in a company is judged by the extent to which someone is prepared to pay directly money for it. And that's not good, that's not bad, that's just the context. Whereas in the university, our ideas are judged by our ability to have them published, to be received by our peers, to be, acknowledged by our universities, by our students, and the like. So the ideas are sort of the same. You sell them to different people, and the way in which you work out whether they're good or bad is a little different. Again, in retrospect, the nice thing about being in business, if no one's paying for your idea, it's pretty obvious it's not the one that is there. Whereas in the university, that was not always clear to me. And the process, the time frame over which they evolve, are challenged, are revised, is quite different.
I think that definitely speaks to the hesitancy that I suppose I saw a lot during my studies from academics or lecturers whenever they would talk about the line between academia and industry. there was not a taboo, but there was maybe this hesitancy in the air. So in preparing for this, I did reach out to a previous supervisor or two.
Yeah.
And the consensus I got was that there is a concern over losing this intellectual freedom that they feel that they have currently, and maybe a concern over the differences in culture between the two. Do you think you could speak to that a little bit?
First of all, is anybody free? Really? I mean, no idea is unconstrained. Again, in retrospect, I'd say, yeah, you do have intellectual freedom at the university, but you've not got carte blanche to do whatever you want. You might think that you have. It's constrained. You're in a department. The department has a status or a feel or a vibe or something, and so you move along with that. That idea is influenced by the people immediately around you. And so I think the idea that just in and of itself, freedom as the difference between an idea in the university and in commerce or even in a business is not as just black and white as I'm free, I'm totally unconstrained. So say, for example, you as a young neuroscientist decide that you want to teach the neuroscience of Taylor Swift in your course. Your management in the university will probably decide about the validity of that, not on the basis of whether there is any neuroscience of Taylor Swift, but perhaps by whether they could put bums on seats. So I don't think that the lack of freedom is the clear dissociation. I think the issue is responsibility for some extent. That's the way I would like to say it, is that if you're trading on your idea and the idea is bad, then very quickly no one gets fed. In the university, I had tons of bad ideas and I continued to get fed. And in a way, we want them. We want bad ideas to occur. And so you need to have them and have them knocked over and that. So the framework for that to occur is probably more apt in universities, that you can explore to its logical end or to its even logical start. They're not that dissimilar. We just serve different masters, and the consequences of our actions might be slightly different. But ultimately, I don't believe anyone's totally free.
A follow-up question or point might be, these differences in constraints perhaps are a bit different from the perspective of someone who has taken an idea into creating a company. Whereas if someone wants to go from academic research into a company that exists already, could you see that there could be more constraints in that scenario? No. I think, so in the context of neuroscience, right, which we're talking, I mean, I think one of the great things that we are as neuroscientists is the constructs that we deal with in terms of our theory are generally arbitrary and enigmatic. Jealousy, love, hunger, appetite, perception. Well, we deal with some pretty kooky things, right? So the processes, though, that we need to do with our theorizing, our development of hypothesis, the extent to which we can then operationally define different parts of our hypothesis, reduce that to numerical, a dimension that we can then statistically test, that's actually a great skill that we necessarily have had to become very comfortable with, because we're largely dealing with unobserved phenomena. So we have to lock down all of those aspects. Would you say that skill's been useful for you, especially as
too right.
an innovation officer?
That's my thing.
Right.
But that's what we all get taught, right? And I think as neuroscientists, all you need to say is, oh my goodness, I've been dealing with the effects of drugs by trying to determine whether there's different sorts of running in mouse cages of poor old rats who have lost a gene or have gained a hippocampus, right? And you say, well, if I can do that, if someone asks me, we need to decide whether we need a swing set down at the end of this yard, or do people in this supermarket prefer blue packaging, or is the number of people all of the sorts of questions that can get asked of young scientists, young skilled people. They get to walk in the park compared to the sort of stuff we have to do. And the principles are exactly the same. Clarify your theory, identify the hypothesis. Sometimes you don't have them, but certainly identify what the thing is that you're going to measure, how it relates to the overall question. Reify it, measure it, do some stats, make a decision as to whether they're different or they're the same or they're related or they're unrelated. What I would recommend is that you then attach to it some estimate of effect so that you can communicate how important anything that you've observed is. This is something that we don't do that well, but that would be the next step. So is it big? Is it little? Doesn't matter. And then you can tell your boss, yep, change the colour of the cheese packets to blue and we'll sell more, or don't let 3 people in this booth at the same time, or whatever. To come back to it, I think sometimes our hesitancy is that we, and this is a context of modern society, I think, as much as modern science, is there's this great desire for specialisation. And part of the desire for specialisation, there's this sort of détente, an unwritten détente that gets set up, which is if I'm the amygdala expert and you're the hippocampus expert, and I think everything works the same there as it does here, I will never dare say anything about your area of expertise. I'm not going to cross that fence, and I assume you're not going to come into my territory. But that specialisation is good and important, but I think the idea is just a preparedness to be at peace with the idea that you may be sailing into areas where you need to use the skill set that you have, but you don't have the high level of precision and knowledge that you've come from within your training. You almost have to diverge again.
So cultivating the adaptability, curiosity and flexibility.
Yeah, and also, giving, if in programs, in PhD programs, I have a PhD program that I advise into, and I like getting students out of their labs, whatever it is, and just showing them the mechanism by which commercial companies do these things, so they can come in and see, all of the processes that sit behind the turning of a scientific idea, indeed a neuroscientific idea, into a commercial reality. And 90% of it is super boring, really. It's all process. There's QA, there's meetings, there's SOPs, all of the stuff that drives you crazy, right? Lots of form filling in. So the idea that you're sitting around Oppenheimer style building huge things that are going to transfer science and the world, that's not the case. I suppose like all of these things, they seem exciting outside, but 90% of it is just care and attention to detail. And so I think showing those processes are really good for young neuroscientists, and indeed any scientists who are seeking to come out of the university. So those processes are in place. Now, why do we need those processes? Selling ideas. So you might say that take a scientific idea and to be able to build a company around that idea is really turning science into technology. It's you're not really selling science, because I suppose if you're in a company that sold science, you would be consulting scientists. Someone says, I've got a problem, bring in the consulting scientist and they will tell me the scientific issues. But if people are buying a widget off you or a system from you, or they're sort of buying a piece of technology, that could even be an idea, but it is a technology nonetheless. The thing that, one of the things of which I'm most proud is that when you have an idea that turns into something that has commercial utility, also an idea that turns into a technology, replication is the crucial thing. You can't just have something that it has to be able to be used again and again and again. You've probably heard in science how we have this idea of a replication crisis. Have you heard that?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should do a show on the replication crisis, because it's very interesting. So essentially it started off in the psychological sciences, where bunches of academics essentially went back to the publications of the cornerstone scientific experiments that had given rise to certain truisms in psychology, and sought to replicate them. And you can imagine what happened. I wouldn't be talking about this if it all worked out hunky-dory.
But do go on.
Yeah, well, they did. I think they replicated about 30. Now I'm just making stuff up, so be careful. But the replication rate was very low, 30% at most. And also, too, there is a periodic or idiosyncratic failures to replicate large effects. Important effects in the context of social science predominantly. And that's extended into a lot of animal biology work, but animal neuroscience in particular. And of course, some of those data are difficult to replicate. We've now got the difficulty of not being able to do lots of animal work because of the ethics and morality around that sort of work. So good scientific facts arise from large numbers of observations. And so a lot of the animal work that also sat at the basis of neuroscience type hypotheses also was not replicated. But if someone buys something off you in business and they say, I want to use it to do this, and then it doesn't do this, you can't just say, well, that was luck, failure to replicate, bad luck. So you need to have your technology be able to replicate. So that boring stuff I was talking about when you bring in the young scientists and show them the sort of under the hood of what it's like to have a commercial company, that boring stuff is all around trying to ensure that the tech or the algorithms or the ideas it's instantiating work the same each time, that there's little room as possible for the wind to be blowing from the east or the person to hold the device upside down or to accidentally or to put it in places where it shouldn't be used. So you're madly trying to define the circumstances, the conditions under which your idea need be used to generate the intended outcome, to address the question that it's been applied to.
Well, thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
So we'll take a little break there.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask you some light-hearted icebreaker questions to give people an idea of the person behind the scientist.
That you're actually human.
So to say, yeah.
That's not an AI sitting here.
Does that sound good?
Yeah, go if you like.
Starting off, we're in Melbourne, bit of a hub of coffee.
Yeah.
What's the go-to coffee order?
For me, interestingly, I will have a cafe latte, and I like it very hot. But I'm getting a little sick of milk now as I'm getting older. I've no difficulties with milk. I'm just bored by it.
Oh, I see.
And one of the, just to crunch it back, I have spent in the last 20 years, I probably spent a week a month at least in the United States, apart from the 2 years. So unusually as a concept, I have developed an appreciation of the filter coffee that Americans drink, which is the weaker coffee, but black, and you guzzle it down all day.
My parents' favorite.
Do you like that? Yeah, it has yeah. And I can really now tell the difference between a good one. It used to all taste terrible to me, but now I quite like it. I like the idea that you can drink coffee without drinking milk, so that's where I am currently.
It always gives me the feel from like a Tarantino movie.
Yeah,
the
that's good.
Scenes.
That's good coffee. It's again, it shows me that the Americans they're really so much more Europeans than the Brits, right? So that filter coffee is right out of Europe. The same approach, middle Europe rather, but, low strength, high volume, just sip it all day. I like that habit.
All right.
Very much.
All right. It's been a long day at work.
Yeah.
You got no dinner at home.
Yeah.
What's the go-to takeaway
Oh,
order?
my goodness. The go-to takeaway dinner. So there's a couple of different versions of me. There's the version I'm a man now of advancing years, and the area in which I do my research is Alzheimer's disease and healthy aging. And all of my research tells me that low calories and certainly low carbohydrates are sort of optimal conditions for healthy aging. So if it was that guy coming home after a meeting, then he's probably going to get some sort of salad or something like that. However, it's just a regular meal. I'll go for a pizza and a bottle of wine any day.
We've covered a lot, and I definitely think you've given people a good perspective on careers in neuroscience. So we'll end it there for today.
Okay.
While you have this platform, is there anything that you would like to promote?
As a takeaway message, I think one of the issues that come up in this talk is probably a reflection of who I am, because I sort of come in as someone doing science and commerce. Is I think in many universities we see those as two separate endeavours: the academic research and the commercial research. One of the things I think to think about promoting is the idea about doing both. As an academic researcher, actually not essentially saying that that's dirty business, or I need to have totally different skills, or there's foul play. I actually invite it in and see if you can understand it from that way. A lot of American colleagues of mine are much better at being able to, or they don't even think of it as an all or none. They just say, okay, through the summer, I've got to go do some other work somewhere. And so they will volunteer to go work in a pharma company or just to do it.
If people wanted to reach out to you, either to talk about Cogstate or for discussion on the academic side, where could they do so?
So you just look me up online and you'll find me.
Perfect. Well, Professor Maruff, thanks for your time today.
My pleasure, Tom.
This was part 1 of my discussion with Professor Maruff, which mainly focused on perspectives that are useful to those currently working in academia. Check back in tomorrow morning for part 2, where we discuss career advice for science students and his work at Monash University. If you enjoyed this discussion and want to learn more about the brain, why not check out our website at brainmatters.nl, where you can find easy-to-follow articles in both English and Dutch to satisfy your curiosity. I would also like to thank the State Library of Victoria for providing us with the space to record the episode. Until next time.